into the deaths of the actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. They say he died from heart disease after his wife passed away from a...
The world was left stunned when Hollywood legend Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa were discovered dead in their Santa Fe home, weeks after they had passed. As authorities delved into the case, unsettling signs suggested that someone had known about their deaths long before the official discovery. Suddenly, all eyes turned to Hackman's daughter, Leslie Ann. Could she have been entangled in something far more sinister than anyone had anticipated? What secrets was she keeping, and how far had she gone to conceal the truth? The answers would be more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Inside the house, an eerie silence filled the air. The front door was slightly ajar, and piles of unopened mail sat untouched for weeks. A concerned neighbor, sensing that something was wrong, contacted the authorities for a wellness check. Expecting a routine call, officers arrived at the scene only to stumble upon something deeply unsettling. Gene Hackman's lifeless body was slumped near the kitchen in a way that defied explanation. His sunglasses lay beside him as if they had just slipped from his hands. Betsy Arakawa was found in the bathroom with scattered pills littering the countertop. The water in the sink had long since evaporated, leaving behind a thin film. Yet, there were no signs of forced entry, no blood, and no evidence of a struggle. Two of the couple's dogs were still alive, wandering through the house, while a third had been found dead inside its crate. However, the most chilling detail was the state of the bodies. Their skin had tightened over their bones, and decomposition had slowed, suggesting the early stages of mummification. Investigators concluded that Gene and Betsy had been dead for weeks. The air inside was stagnant, untouched for a long time, and rotting food sat abandoned on the countertops. It was as though time had frozen within the house. One pressing question loomed. How had two people, one a famous Hollywood star, remained undiscovered for so long? The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Gene Hackman's pacemaker had logged its final activity before shutting down, providing a crucial timestamp. Investigators analyzed the data, and what they uncovered shifted the entire investigation. The pacemaker suggested that Gene had likely died on February 17th. If that was accurate, the house had been lifeless for at least 9 days before authorities arrived. No distress calls had been made, no one had checked in, and nothing seemed out of place. Yet something didn't add up. Why was Betsy in a separate room when Gene collapsed? If she had been alive after his passing, why hadn't she sought help? The slightly open door raised even more suspicion. Had someone entered before the police arrived? Was the door deliberately left that way? Toxicology reports ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning and drug overdose, and with no clear cause of death, the case seemed to reach a standstill. Then a new revelation changed everything. Surveillance data showed that Gene Hackman's home had been under quiet observation for weeks before his death. Security cameras had detected unusual movement. Phone records revealed strange activity, and GPS tracking displayed irregular patterns before law enforcement even arrived. Someone had already known what had happened inside the house. Shockingly, all digital evidence traced back to one person, Gene Hackman's daughter. The investigation took a sharp turn. Her statements did not align with the evidence. She had claimed to have spoken to her father just weeks before his death, yet phone records suggested otherwise. Financial transactions revealed suspicious inconsistencies. The deeper investigators dug, the more troubling the truth became. The mystery was far from over. Investigators looked deeper and found something even stranger. There was more to this than just his death. It had to do with money. Documents from Gene's estate had been changed before he was found, before it was even proven that he had died. Someone had already tried to get his money. There was strong proof that things were going badly with the case. Was Gene Hackman's death really an accident, or was someone planning something sinister long before he was found? When police looked at Gene Hackman's pacemaker data, the case took a big turn. Before going quiet, the device had recorded one last movement. It was clear from the timestamp when everything stopped. Investigators looked for signs of life after that day. They checked his phone records. No calls, no texts, no web searches. His financial activities had stopped. No bank logins, no purchases with credit cards. It looked like he had just disappeared. Then they found something else. Security cameras on a nearby property caught people moving around outside Hackman's house. There was a shadow near the door, and a car was left parked in the street for hours. Inside the house, motion sensors picked up on strange behavior at odd times. The front door was never opened, though someone was watching. But where were they? The police looked at his home security system, and the log showed something unsettling. Before he died, the doorbell had been turned off and on several times. No signs of forced entry, no emergency calls. But something didn't make sense. Hackman followed the same routine every day. Every morning, he took his dogs for a walk at the same time, checked his mail, and paid his bills. His life was predictable and easy to track. Then, all of a sudden, everything stopped. The police dug deeper and found his last digital traces, his last writings, his last web search, his most recent call. Each one ended quickly. No warnings, no farewells. Then another clue surfaced. Cell tower data showed a strange phone signal near Hackman's house. The number wasn't registered and kept bouncing between towers, hiding its true origin. The signal appeared the night before his pacemaker recorded its last beat. Someone had been there. Someone knew what had happened. Betsy should have called for help if Hackman had been having a medical emergency. But there was no call. Why didn't she leave the house if she was still alive after he died? Why didn't she tell anyone? The police examined her bank records. On February 16th, there was only one small transaction. By itself, it didn't seem significant, but now it appeared to be a digital footprint, a sign of life before everything went dark. That day, both Hackman and his wife passed away. The real question was, who had been watching them? Detectives looked for someone who could access the house, someone who had something to gain. That's when their focus shifted. The surveillance records had raised doubts, and it was time to uncover the truth, what had been hidden. At first, it wasn't clear who Leslie and Hackman was. People had been focused on the strange timeline, the surveillance footage, and the pacemaker data. As the police delved deeper into the case, they uncovered something that shifted the entire investigation. She had claimed that she last spoke to her father a few weeks before his death, assuring that everything seemed normal, with no signs of concern or unusual behavior. However, when authorities examined call logs, they found no records of any calls, texts, or other forms of communication. The investigation into the deaths of Hollywood legend Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Oroa took an unexpected turn as authorities discovered unsettling inconsistencies in the timeline provided by their daughter, Leslie and Hackman. According to her, she had last spoken to her father just weeks before his death, yet phone records revealed no such interactions. This discrepancy prompted further scrutiny, leading investigators to examine her bank records, which revealed that she had been discussing her father's fortune even before his death was officially confirmed. Legal inquiries into the inheritance had already been raised, and there were alterations made to important documents related to Hackman's assets, changes that occurred before February 17th, the day of his death. This raised suspicions that Leslie may have had prior knowledge of her father's fate and was preparing for something sinister before it actually happened. When confronted with these inconsistencies, Leslie became defensive, making her responses even more unclear. She was unable to explain why no records existed of the calls she claimed to have made or provide a reasonable justification for suspicious financial transactions linked to her name. A shocking revelation followed. Hackman's assets were being discussed with a lawyer on the very day his pacemaker recorded its last activity. At that time, no public announcement had been made regarding his death, and he had been missing for so long that nobody knew his fate. This raised a chilling question. Why were changes being made to his estate before anyone had officially confirmed his passing? As the investigation deepened, it became clear that the case was no longer just about Hackman's death. It had expanded into a broader inquiry involving money, fraud, and deception, with mounting evidence suggesting that Leslie may have been attempting to gain access to her father's wealth. The police were faced with a growing mystery. When the autopsy results arrived, they provided no clear answers. Gene and Betsy's bodies showed no signs of trauma or violence, and initial theories about carbon monoxide poisoning were quickly ruled out. Investigators found no traces of pills or barbiturates in their systems. But there was something missing: Gene Hackman's heart medication. This discovery led authorities to consider the possibility that someone had intentionally withheld his medication, allowing his condition to worsen. The disappearance of medication raised troubling suspicions that Hackman's death was not an accident, but rather the result of deliberate actions. As investigators continued to probe deeper into Hackman's estate, they discovered that legal documents had been tampered with before his death was even confirmed. Leslie had attempted to modify these documents, despite having no legal right to do so. The timing of these alterations pointed to an even darker reality, that she had been preparing for the transfer of her father's wealth well in advance. Financial records and transactions indicated that she had been inquiring about his fortune and making plans to secure a larger portion of the inheritance. This revelation escalated the investigation into a full-blown legal battle, with disputes over missing pages, financial discrepancies, and contested inheritance claims. As the case unfolded, the authorities were no longer just dealing with estate disputes. They were uncovering a story of deception, greed, and a desperate quest for wealth. With the investigation intensifying, Leslie Hackman found herself at the center of a case that would expose secrets far darker than anyone could have imagined. Too many warning signs had emerged regarding Leslie Hackman's role in the estate dispute, prompting authorities to take action. Determined to uncover the truth, they placed her under constant surveillance, monitoring every move, phone call, email, and financial transaction. What they discovered was deeply unsettling. Her bank records revealed a hidden story. Unusual transaction alerts raised suspicions. Funds had been transferred between different banks, and some withdrawals were made in small amounts to avoid detection. These financial movements occurred at odd hours, with some happening even before Gene Hackman was officially declared dead. Investigators examined private emails, uncovering chilling details. Messages exchanged with lawyers suggested something troubling. Leslie had been discussing the estate long before there was any public reason to do so. On paper, her father was still alive, yet she had already begun making inquiries about estate claims, as if preparing for an event she knew was inevitable. Phone records provided further damning evidence. The timeline revealed that she had consulted financial experts, transferred assets, and attempted to fast-track legal proceedings while the public still believed Gene Hackman was alive. Her actions suggested a certainty that her father was no longer involved. The most incriminating evidence came from a forensic audit of bank transactions. Large sums of money had quietly been moved into private accounts, some of which were traced to offshore banks, making them difficult to track. It became clear that Leslie had been shifting funds long before she should have had access to them. At this stage, there was no room for speculation. The surveillance footage, financial records, and legal documents all pointed to the same conclusion. This was not the case of a grieving daughter managing her father's affairs. It was a calculated financial scheme. The evidence was undeniable. Surveillance footage, altered legal paperwork, and suspicious bank transactions all pointed to one individual. Even before Gene Hackman had been officially pronounced dead, Leslie had already set her plan into motion. The investigation revealed a pattern of deception, fraud, and interference. Justice had to be served, and the police acted swiftly. Leslie was arrested, charged, and taken into custody immediately. Prosecutors presented a case that unfolded like a meticulously arranged puzzle. Every missing page from the will, premature land claims, and undisclosed transactions fit together, exposing how she had attempted to manipulate the system. It became clear that she had been preparing for her father's death long before it was publicly known. The verdict came quickly, and as a consequence, she lost all rights to Gene Hackman's estate. She was convicted on multiple counts of theft, financial fraud, and obstruction of justice. Every dollar, asset, and legal connection to her father was stripped away, and her name was permanently removed from the inheritance. She had gambled everything on a scheme that ultimately crumbled before her eyes. Now, she was left with nothing, no money, no claim to her father's legacy, and a complete and final downfall. Yet, even after the sentencing, lingering questions remained. What truly happened in Gene Hackman's final days? Did Leslie simply take advantage of an opportunity, or was there something even more sinister at play? Though the case had reached its conclusion, the mystery persisted. Some believed that the full truth had yet to be revealed, and the secret surrounding Gene Hackman's last days may never be fully uncovered. What do you think really happened? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Exploration Nexus. Click on the next video popping up on your screen.